Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. We have a very exciting webinar today where we will be discussing about redefining university enrollments in Africa. My name is Kartika and I'm from LeadSquared's marketing team. Joining me today are our speakers. We have Mr. Adam Kelly, who is the Group Chief Commercial Officer at Growth 10, a partner holding company of Richfield. Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please tell us a bit about you and your journey so far.
Thank you, Karthika, and great to be a part of this webinar. Hello, everyone. So, as mentioned, I'm Adam Kelly, heading up the whole commercial teams here at Richfield and the broader group, with specific focus on enrollments for our students and prospective students, as well as continue to retain revenue in the form of retentions in our multi-year programs. So, a broad portfolio, an exciting portfolio, and something that really I enjoy working on and with on a daily basis.
Thank you so much, Adam. Really looking forward to learning from you today. We also have LeadSquared's Head of Enterprise Businesses here, Chantel Fraser. Chantel, please tell us a bit about you and your journey so far.
Thanks, Kartika. Hi, everybody. Really looking forward to an informative discussion with Adam today. I've been with LeadSquared since 2019. And yeah, really passionate about everything to do around lead management, sales, and marketing. And I've been, in my past life, been a LeadSquared user since 2013. So really glad to be on the stage with Adam today.
Thank you so much, Chantel and Adam. Again, looking forward to learning from you both. So, before we start with the actual webinar, let me just go through the agenda points for today. We will be discussing the key challenges in enrollments, evolution and competitive landscape of education with alternative education, understanding admissions and the efforts at the increasing enrollments, role of technology in the admission process, last but not the least, future of enrollments, seamless student experience, and sales experience. Okay, so a few pointers to the audience today. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please do put them up on the questions tab. You can find it towards the right side corner of your screen. We will take up as many questions as possible towards the end of the webinar. We will also put up a couple of polls. Please do interact with them. We would love to hear from you. All right, so with that, I am going to hand the session over to our speakers. Chantel, please take it forward.
Thanks, Kartika. So, Adam, yeah, thanks so much for joining me for this discussion today. And having worked with you for just over 2 years now, you're still my go-to guy when it comes to keeping up to date with what's happening in the education industry. And I've certainly enjoyed, being part of your journey this far. But I think, just in terms of redefining university enrollments in Africa, more than 60% of the African population falls under the age of, 25. Yet enrollments in tertiary education vary from 2% to 20%, depending on where you are, whether you're in Tanzania or Nigeria. And I think the top reasons, come down to lack of access of education, limited availability of seats, and then, of course, affordability. But there also have been efforts on multiple levels to improve higher education and employability with different avenues such as graduate courses, distance learning, executive learning, and then the traditional, campus branches. So today, I would like to, explore with you a little how education has evolved and how institutes are leveraging technology. So, although there's still a lot more to be achieved, and I think the education system has evolved a lot over the past decade or two. But with Atec and alternative education growing rapidly, what do you see, in terms of the future of education?
Well, I think when we look back at probably the last couple of decades, Chantal, I mean, the alternatives have gone up exponentially. And the increase in alternatives is largely driven by the advanced modalities in which one can learn. The typical definition of a university was in the past was going to a campus, sitting in a lecture hall, and ultimately learning from a lecturer on site. I think when you speak about EdTech and the evolution of online platforms and online learning platforms in particular, this ultimately opens up new modalities and new markets for a lot of providers, education institutions, and naturally it is a competitive threat to the well-established contact learning institutions that we were once very familiar with, or kind of termed as a university or a higher education institution. So that choice of maybe 3 or 4 back say 2 decades ago that a person was looking at now turns into 10 to 15 choices. And it's probably not just your formal higher education qualification that they're looking at. There's now the introduction of short courses, on-demand learning, and ultimately the convenience that EdTech has provided us with. So certainly the number of alternatives that we're now exposed to, and the multiple modalities, really increasing the competitive nature of education and higher education specifically.
Yeah, and I personally think it's great, that we've had, the introduction of alternatives and all these new modalities. But do you think the new modes of learning affect the regular courses at all, or do you think the target market for regular courses and alternative courses are very different?
So whilst there is something for everyone, because nowadays there's something for everyone in terms of kind of the nature of the qualification, the skills component, the outputs, the modality, as I mentioned. So certainly there's a very wide variety, but absolutely, I think kind of the traditional qualifications of today are definitely under threat from some of the much shorter variants of specific modules. The equivalent of a module in a higher education program would be offered on its own, and often that module, or just those couple of modules, was the draw card into formal higher education. And now there's a short online skills program that can give you exactly what you want in a fraction of the time that you would usually take to complete it, to give you the skills to be able to pursue that industry, or pursue a career in a specific industry, and effectively equip you with the skills that you need to start your career in a certain industry. So absolutely, I think under threat, and that's why you see the formal higher education providers starting to integrate with skills badges, starting to integrate kind of small setting up partnerships with smaller online learning institutions, so that it can now be seen as a package or just added value into the formal higher education qualification that you would get. So the output is obviously far greater, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and also it's quite exciting for people that are also currently working, that can upskill kind of on the job. And I see that you have also integrated your courses with Moodle, learning management system for interactive learning. And so, how would you say that that's changed your students' engagement? What have you seen, after integrating your courses with Moodle?
When you look at the traditional modality of learning, let's go back to the example I mentioned earlier of a contact learning institution with a lecture in a lecture hall, and ultimately the learner management system in those days played a kind of a very passive role in supporting with kind of content. Maybe you were sick one day and you wanted to go catch up on lecture slides, and you would engage with the learner management system to do so. Fast forward post-COVID, the learner management system's role in supporting both contact and obviously distance learning as well is huge. And ultimately that's come about by all of the resources that a student would require now having to sit on that learner management system, to be able to give them that real-time support, that access to immediate information, whether it be lecture videos, course slides, research content, and ultimately, the role in which it's played in supporting a student is no longer a passive one, but effectively we see it just from the engagement of our students. They live on that system. They thrive off the content that is posted on there, the relevant content, the guest lectures, guest speakers, guest articles, and ultimately use that as an integral part of their learning in the respective courses that they study.
Yeah, and I also think it's being great in the sense that it addresses, different ways that different people learn. So yeah, lots of advantages. I pulled out a report that was published by the World Bank. Read it a couple of months ago and pulled it out again and took a look. And I remember, just reading that they had reported that since 1985, long time ago, about 9 African countries, had led the trend in terms of university enrollment growth. So overall, they said that the African continent has attained an average annual growth rate of 15% in its higher education institutions. So, that doesn't sound too bad, but it depends, where you're situated. But in terms of, your views on the subject, what are the efforts being made, that you see in South Africa and across Africa, being made to improve enrollments?
I think it's very simple. I mean, when we spoke about the increased competitiveness that the various modalities have and the way of learning and the different platforms that one now can learn through online has presented to the higher education sector globally, I think it's really stepping back and looking at your value proposition in the specific market that you operate, understanding that you can't just have an accredited qualification with the higher education governing body within a specific country or region. It's really kind of using that and building on it and enhancing that value proposition in terms of the offering that's going to support a student in ultimately not only obtaining a qualification, but being ready to enter the workplace, hit the ground running, having the skills, both soft and hard skills, in addition to their formal qualification, to be work ready in today's ever evolving environment. And once you've kind of got that value proposition, which incorporates price as well, and ensuring that the value that you offer far exceeds the price that you're offering at it, to enable one to have that competitive advantage and attract students. But then obviously the messaging and going to market to really shout that value proposition from the rooftops, building it and marketing it in such a way. And if you've done those two correctly, it's then about effective lead management. And I think preventing lead leakage and maximizing conversion within that space will ultimately be the ideal formula for maximizing and improving enrollments within any institution.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. And I think just to add to that, I'd probably say, I still see a lot of room for improvements, for colleges and universities to increase students' enrollment. As a start, if you just consider most prospective students these days judge a college or university by their online application process. So, toilsome online processes, can overshadow even the most remarkable campus life. So, it's imperative to continuously manage things like your website and online processes, so you make it easy for prospects and remove any resistance, for them to interact easily with your admissions team. And from what I've observed, Richfield does this really well. It's almost like a project that never ends. For you guys, it's always an ongoing process of improvement. And I think that certainly has contributed, to your success. So, off the back of that, Adam, what role does automation play when it comes to increasing enrollments?
So, I mean, naturally, when people use the word automation, Chantal, they think of efficiencies. And while efficiencies are fantastic in terms of, the productivity and maximizing the use of a specific resource within our business's time, The efficiency component is, for me, secondary. I look at what automation does. It allows for effective prioritization. And what I mean by that is, coming into just the higher education spaces, and this goes for any institution, is, you make use of leads, and on face value, a name, surname, email address, contact number, and maybe one or two other details, ensures that on face value, every lead is the same. Now, what you need is, when you're working with a large sum of data, you need to effectively prioritize what is a better lead than the other. And I think that's where automation plays a critical role. It enables you to engage with those leads in whatever, through various channels. And what automation allows is information to come back. And that information will talk to the engagement of a student, the interest of a prospective student. And ultimately that engagement and interest would allow a student advisor, a sales representative, to effectively prioritize what they would focus on that specific day. And the priority is key in grabbing the low-hanging fruit to make sure that you don't leave any enrollments on the table. So I think automation in that regard, in terms of being able to effectively prioritize one's sales funnel and the leads within that funnel, is where it plays a really big role, and supports many institutions in that part of the sales process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, lead management is often so overlooked. A lot of people just kind of jump into the CRM space and forget about the lead management space. And, there's a whole lot of things that have to happen before somebody becomes a, onboarded or enrolled student. So, absolutely agree with you on the lead management side. And, just on top of that is that, working education, obviously, and Atec is a sweet spot for us at LeadSquared. It's something we're really good at, and so naturally I'm having conversations with the execs on a weekly basis, and some of the key focus areas, it's 2 years ago, lead management started to kind of become a focus. Look, not everybody's where they should be yet, but it certainly was a focus. But today, there has been a transition. There's more urgency being placed on digitization in terms of student self-service portals, so that you can achieve faster decision-making, capture that prospective student as fast as you can, implementation of or achieving better sales efficiencies. So that being said, I think your team have been using at Richfield, now you've been using LeadSquared for probably, let's say, just a little over 2 years. But looking back when we implemented LeadSquared, if I recall, we only implemented it kind of conservatively and in the call center. Why did you start there? If you could remember, looking back, so why did you start there, and then looking at where you are in your LeadSquared journey now, what business functions have you extended LeadSquared into, and why?
Well, I mean, to go back to the first part of your question, I mean, as much as we move in a very fast-paced manner, we're a very agile business, and we kind of look to see what's right and ultimately go for it. We still got to crawl before we walk, and we sort of walk before we run. So although LeadSquared enables us the ability to run very quickly in the form of the analogy, we still needed to kind of, it was a big step change within our business at the time. So, ultimately we needed to understand some of the teething issues that we always, I'm sure you've seen in many an implementation, Chantal, and really get the right formula for our business in terms of the use of the system. That's enabled us to scale it out to the entire sales team across the business with great effect, and ultimately across the group with great effect. And ultimately for us, that's never enough. We will constantly look at the new innovations that LeadSquared is bringing, but also just the other modules that we have access to that we may not be using. And with the more advanced way in which we use just the pre-sales component of the system enables a lot of information and data to set us up beautifully for the use of the retentions module, which we're looking to roll out very soon. So super excited about the use of that. And then bolted onto that is obviously the marketing module. And I mean, we see communication across the sales cycle. And remember, the sales cycle doesn't end when a student enrolls. The sales cycle ends when they graduate. And ultimately, because of retention being such a key impact in university enrollments and the university space, a revenue from a new student, revenue from a returning student is revenue. And we're all sales-led organizations, so it's ultimately super important. So looking at kind of the further advancements of the system in terms of the marketing modules, how we can communicate at scale, but in a very personal way to our students, is kind of one of the key latest advancements. So we're super excited about that. I'm sure Chantal in a couple of months will be telling me about something more, and we look forward to learning about it. And hey, if it's a fit for our business, we'll look to potentially implement it. But we really enjoy the fact that on a global stage, LeadSquared is kind of getting best practice from multiple clients in multiple markets, and us being one of them, and ultimately using that best practice to the betterment of their existing clients. So I must say that for us is a key part of the partnership at the moment.
And Adam, you also decided, a couple of months after achieving kind of the first milestone with LeadSquared, you also decided, to move into, let's call it, the digitization. So, you went the self-service portal route. I mean, would you mind sharing like how that's impacted or improved the enrollment process? Any insights you want to share on that?
Without giving too much away to, I'm sure a couple of competitors that have dialed into that. But I mean, very, very simply, we went from a PDF document that one would fill out online to creating a portal with the same information that incorporates validations to increase contactability rates, that is fully self-serving right through to the payment portal. And ultimately what we've seen, especially in the last couple of years, is the uptake to online shopping. I mean, it's whether you're shopping for kind of just your groceries, or open to kind of using online portals to complete kind of the sign up of a course or a qualification. The appetite by many people across the world has increased significantly over the last 2 years. So ultimately, we've needed to position our business to not only drive efficiencies, but to cater for the convenience factor that so many people seek when looking at a prospective institution. They're fully capable, give them the information to do the research, and then give them the opportunity to act on what they want to do, which is register, potentially from the comfort of their home, potentially late at night when they may not have access to a student advisor, but they may not need access because they're fully capable of doing it themselves. And that's what the online portal has done for us. It's also kind of seconded as just an on-campus efficiency. So instead of physically sitting with a pen and paper and ultimately filling out forms, you can do it online, and you can just imagine what that does for an efficiency of not having to capture that information into our ERP system, leveraging the integration that we've created between our CRM and our ERP with and ultimately just the time and enhanced kind of storage of information that's created for our business. So I mean, not giving too much more away, but I think it's did we think we'd be this far down 2 years ago? Absolutely not. But it's great to have come on this journey and continue to create these efficiencies that better our business.
Yeah, there's still a lot more to come, and I read a lot of case studies, and I mean, there's so many online when it comes to results off the back of automation. But even universities and colleges that are like highly respected for already in terms of delivering outstanding student services, students, services and support, etc., have taken advantage of automation. And, things like modernizing workflows like the application process, it just eliminates so many time-consuming back and forths, for the students, but also for your admissions team. And you read these case studies, and I mean, imagine earning back 10 days of productivity. I mean, with every, after modernizing certain workflows. So, I mean, I'm sure you could think of a lot more things you could spend, 10 days on instead of manual back and forths.
Absolutely. I mean, when I look at it, the admissions team is ultimately the broader sales team, and if you're giving the productivity that or the efficiencies and the time back that they get can be spent on key activities that would lead to further lead generation and ultimately increased revenue. So when you look at the goal of many institutions globally is to continue to see growth, enrollment number growth, and just by incorporating these efficiencies, while it's great and it leads to a more productive day, that time spent will ultimately be put to a revenue generating activity, which meets kind of the overall financial goals of the business. So absolutely, the efficiencies and the productivity that comes out of it, and the tangible impact that has on revenue growth is really good, and we've seen it. We've really seen it within our business.
That's great. So, I mean, I think it goes without saying that students are the lifeblood, of any university. And with rising tuition fees and, decreasing student retention rates, coupled with, increased competition in digital learning offerings, enrollments still remain top of mind. And it's kind of like higher education is facing the perfect storm with, the increasing numbers of high school finishers, the changing demographics of students. Student retention is a big one, and workforce retention. I'm interested to hear from you what your thoughts are on this, but importantly on the student retention side. And is this a big focus for you guys at Ridgefield?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we see these days is no matter if you're studying online, through one of our Ridgefield's many distance learning programs, or at a Ridgefield campus, kind of all over South Africa, the institution needs to be very close to that student. And ultimately what, kind of the automation does, it allows you to keep the student up to date with everything they need. Remember, you're dealing with sometimes fresh school leavers whose hand has been physically held throughout their schooling career, or you're dealing with working professionals that have got multiple priorities, whether it be work priorities in terms of work deadlines and the likes, or even other family priorities and personal priorities. You need to remain very close to them to keep them up to date, keep them engaged. And ultimately that engagement test, if you've got an engaged student, it leads to a much higher throughput in terms of students that complete their qualifications and ultimately graduate. And one of the key elements to driving that engagement is communication, and having the resources to be able to, as I mentioned earlier, communicate at scale, but in a very personal way is hugely important. And ultimately that communication, that driving continuous engagement will ensure ultimately from our perspective that we've got students that are submitting assignments on time, they're attending classes, they are kind of doing what they need to do when they need to be doing. They have access to all of the support that they need to. So communicating about the various channels of support channels, whether it be academic support, whether it be administrative support, that is super, super important. And not only having a single channel of support, for example, allowing them to communicate to you in what is most convenient channel of communication to them. Is it WhatsApp? We've seen a huge increase in people engaging with WhatsApp. Is it email? Is it ultimately a phone call? or even social media. So, I think what's key for us is having all of those channels, but a centralized system that's able to track the engagement across those channels to understand exactly what the student wants, what they need, and to ultimately keep them engaged.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. So then I guess it's safe to say that an Excel spreadsheet's not going to do the job.
Unfortunately not. I'm an Excel lover and a huge advocate for Excel and what it's able to do. But just in terms of lead management, it is becoming a thing of the past. And largely because it's stagnant. And despite various tools of kind of sharing information, more so than in the past. What we often used to see is a lead would kind of be implemented inputted onto a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet would ultimately stay with that user. And if that user left the organization, that spreadsheet would kind of remain on a computer hard drive and never to be seen again. And even if it was shared, there's so many more leads coming in that you would just see them at face value as names on a spreadsheet. And I mentioned earlier prioritization. You wouldn't be able to effectively prioritize which is more important than the other. And with the systems that we have these days, you can still use kind of old leads to convert and contribute to new sales now, because you've got information that says, well, hang on a minute, they were interested. And something piqued their interest. Let me re-engage with them. Maybe 6 months ago wasn't the right time for them. Maybe they had hard pressing deadlines at work, and it was just a tough environment for them. And what various systems and platforms and LeadSquared enable us to do is really look back at those and say, okay, well, let's re-engage. Are you still interested? And what's been great for us is some of them have been. And they've been very receptive to the follow-up conversations and calls that we've had. That's ultimately led them to enrolling in our mid-year intake that kicked off earlier this month.
I think that's phenomenal. And, so many businesses, don't recognize or realize like this gold mine that you're potentially sitting on. And it is about, nurturing those leads, because, we wish it was different, but unfortunately not everybody is, has a straight line to closure. And, sometimes we've got to have multiple discussions. But what is great now, moving away from the Excel spreadsheets, is like you rightfully said, you're able to track all that engagement across multiple channels. And I'd like to just add on to that, student retention, as you said, is something that's important at Richfield right now. But Adam, if we look at like your core business systems, why would you say it's important to integrate, with your student management systems, and your Moodle, your LMS systems, into your LeadSquared platform? And what does that enable you to do?
Well, ultimately, it's the efficiencies, and we spoke about what efficiencies create earlier. But there's efficiencies that's created out of it, but there's also, when you've got it all in one system, and that's fantastic, but you need all of that information to be transferred into another system. Ultimately, what you're going to sit is human error creeps in. When you're capturing large sums of data, it's easy to kind of have a typo or whatever the case may be. And down the line, that can have big consequences and implications in the how the student is registered, the prospective modules, the contact details of that student, and prevents things like I mentioned, engagement. You can only communicate effectively with a student if you've got the right telephone number, the right email address, and ultimately the right channels of communication. If not, it's going to be very difficult for an institution to keep students engaged. So ultimately, integration has prevented a lot of those errors, and ultimately what it's also done is enabled huge efficiencies. And just in staff morale alone, when we implemented these integrations, which wasn't very long ago, the joy that it brings to a team member who was sitting manually capturing it, and often it wasn't a fun part of their day. Let's just say that, Chantal. And salespeople, they're vibrant, they're energetic, and almost to put them in a corner to be involved in administrative tasks and sometimes be taxing. So what was key there was giving them their time back to focus on what they love, and that's engaging with people, engaging with prospective students, and letting the systems takes care of all of the administration.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. That you just you've been able to recognize and see the joy, or I always say it's time to make sales fun again. So that's great that you guys have been able to recognize that. And I think that my last point on that, Adam, is that in education, what I've seen is that there's during your peak periods, you guys seem to handle scaling up really easily, because you don't have these steep learning curves when it comes to the way you guys have implemented your LeadSquared platform. So I mean, surely that's made scaling super easy for you guys as well to deal with your peak periods.
Absolutely. And I think that's always, as an institution, we don't look for what we can do now or what we need now. We look for what we need in the future. So it's always about kind of preparing for growth, and naturally, certain processes with certain systems, and we made mention of spreadsheets and the likes, that they work. They're absolutely fine for the number of leads that one receives, and kind of the type of information that you would need to update and have access to. But as I mentioned, what we look to do is we've enhanced our value proposition, increase in marketing, and ultimately the product of that is an exceptional amount of leads. And if you don't have a system that's able to effectively screen those leads in such a way that enables a key focus and prioritization, well, then we will have lead leakage. There will be money left on the table. There will be an opportunity cost for not doing a certain, not implementing certain systems, not enhancing certain processes. So, for us, I think that's been one of the key features of incorporating and setting up a CRM and something that can manage scale, not just for today, not just for a peak period, but ultimately as we look to scale on a global scale, excuse the pun, but ultimately that will enable us to manage as many leads as we receive, simply put.
Yeah, makes sense. So I just want to give or ask you rather for some advice here. There may be people that are on this webinar today that are in the education space, and what I'm about to ask you is not news for them, but for people that are new to the industry, is that every year there are matriculants who find themselves unable to enroll in many of our country's public universities, because the public universities struggle to keep up with demand for placements, literally just due to lack of space. So this means that we have many matriculants that need to go and find alternatives. And thankfully, in South Africa, at least, there's been a rise in approved private institutions who offer degree programs, along with other programs. But I can see that the private education sector is playing such an important role ensuring that learners have an alternative place to study. So when parents are faced with their child not being accepted at a public university, they need to go and do their own due diligence, as there are, many illegitimate private institutions out there. So what advice would you give parents, when it comes to doing their own due diligence to ensure that they enroll their child at a registered and accredited institution? What should they be looking out for?
So I think, when you go back to earlier, you mentioned the perfect storm, and what role the private higher education providers provide globally is ultimately to service the capacity constraints that many public institutions face. So with if a private higher education institution wasn't one's first choice, then ultimately it does that. What we see the trend is the private higher educations, because of the value propositions, because of kind of the agility in which many like Richfield operate at, is they're able to offer more than just a degree, very quickly. Whereas, kind of some of your more traditional institutions, it's very difficult to start adding on soft skill courses, entrepreneurship programs, skills badges, and the like. So ultimately, that forms part of an enhanced value proposition that will attract many prospective students and many prospective parents of prospective students to a private higher education institution. But I think that's wonderful, and a marketing message that you can buy into, and a value proposition is wonderful, that you can buy into is great. But always go first to the accreditation. And it's very easy, with a bit of research, with all of the information that we have at our disposal these days through the internet. The Council for Higher Education and the higher education bodies that govern accreditation across many countries will have issued an accreditation number to various institutions. So, you can either ask the prospective institutions for a certificate that shows that, or you can get in touch with the various higher education authority in your country to just verify the accreditation credentials of some of the private higher education institutions. I think what's wonderful is you've seen these accreditation bodies actively policing the sector to ensure that there is no what is termed bogus institutions. And similarly, providing a great deal of support to private higher education institutions in allowing them to kind of reducing the barriers to entry within the market within reason, that will allow an enhanced offering of quality education to as many people, whether it be in the form of a contact learning campus or whether it be in the form of online higher education. So always look for the accreditation, and then yes, do your research. I think there's go to a face-to-face or engage with someone in a more personal way. Don't just stick to digital channels in terms of how you engage, because you never know, never sure who you may be speaking to. So I think there's a lot of easy checks that many people can do just to make sure that they're dealing with a reputable institution.
Oh, thanks for that, Adam. I think I'm certainly excited about the way forward in the education space. There's still lots of opportunity to realize more growth, and like I said earlier, make sales fun again, and hit the bottom line with great results. But and we certainly I certainly look forward to being part of your ongoing journey when it comes to automation across your various business units. So from my side, I just wanted to thank you for your very valuable insights today and for a great discussion. I wanted to save some time so if any questions have come through, that we can get those questions from the audience. So I'm going to hand back to Kartika to see if we've got any questions that the audience would like you to answer. Thanks,
Sure.
Adam.
Yes, thank you so much, Chantel and Adam. Adam, thank you for walking us through your journey. It was very inspiring. And clearly, this discussion has taught me, I would say, the importance of having a lead management tool. So, yeah, that was the whole point of the discussion, and it really brought a lot of insights to the table. So, thank you so much to both the speakers for putting it out there and teaching us literally, because I've learned a lot from this session. So, going to the questions, I see that we have a question from Nasir. He asks, what kind of strategy would you suggest to attract students from Europe and North America to study MS and PhD programs at an international university in Saudi Arabia, which would offer a generous scholarship?
Firstly, I think lovely question. I like the bit at the end that offers a generous scholarship. I mean, that obviously looks at kind of the financial challenges that many face in acquiring their master's level and ultimately PhD level. When it comes to a strategy of attracting global markets into your market, I think you've got to, firstly, the use of online tools makes it very easy. What we see within our market is global competitors using online modality and delivery to parachute into markets simply through a marketing campaign. You've got all the digital marketing that goes with that, allows them to parachute into markets and to become a real threat to local institutions that offer both contact and online learning. So what I would my advice for Nasir would be to formulate some sort of, look at the modules within the master's program, maybe break down that program. Let's formulate a short learning program that would give you the equivalent credits for that module that incorporates both the learning content, some online learning content, an assessment that if completed and ultimately you pass the assessment, would give you the equivalent credits for that master's program. Because what you'll start to see is something what is often referred to as the credit accumulation and transfer. You accumulate those credits in the form of completing one or two modules, and you might say, well, gosh, I've done two modules. If I can complete the other 6 modules, for example, I'll have completed the equivalent of the master's level program. And I think what you do is you don't allow them all online because you want to attract them to your institution. But similarly, you test the water. You say, okay, well, let's put a part of the scholarship to a reduced fee to complete this module, and ultimately you would then draw them into the master's program. I think once they're in the master's program, ultimately they can look at then articulating into the PhD. The other form is to look at international partners, where a specific module you can create alignment. So when one completes that module or completes that program, there will then be dual accreditation, and then use that dual accreditation to get students that may want to come and do their PhD from an institution that maybe only offers master's level as their highest qualification. Have that overlap so that if someone graduates with a master's level qualification at that institution, it's recognized within I think it's CAUST. If it's recognized with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia University, ultimately what they would enable them to do is to attract those master's level graduates into the PhD program. So Nasir, I hope that answers your question and is giving you a little bit of insight. And yes.
Yeah.
To add.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, no, Katika. I just wanted to add on to that is that there are some really, really phenomenal businesses in Africa, which we kind of put into the cross-border education vertical, and those may be good. Adam's mentioned looking at partnerships, etc. So there's some really good cross-border education platforms that you could potentially partner with as well, Nasir. And I'm happy if you reach out to me to introduce you to a few that also, happen to be LeadSquared clients. So happy to do some intros for you.
Yes, I guess that answers the question. Nasir has also, replied that he's happy with the answers. Thank you for the question, Nasir. We have one more question from Teja. She asks, how do you see the collaboration between Atec and universities shaping the courses?
I think it's hugely important in terms of the new way in which a course is delivered. It's incorporating video content that replicates a live environment, which we see some of the challenges of being able to attend a face class on a daily basis, whether it be kind of work-life balance challenges, whether it be transport challenges, the affordability that comes with that, with increased oil price and the effect that's had on kind of transport and commuter costs. So really enabling this kind of almost blended approach to learning, and we see with COVID, that EdTech, the incorporation of EdTech in the university's courses was accelerated during COVID and is now the new norm. It's not something that's been taken away. It's ultimately shaped the new way in which we learn. And that really is kind of going from full contact into a more blended approach, or allowing a more blended approach to suit the needs of a student. And ultimately, a happy student is an engaged student. An engaged student is a student that has a very high propensity to see out their qualification and graduate on the best stage of all, and that's the graduation stage.
Thank you, Adam. Chantel, do you have to add something to that?
No, I think Adam, answered that wonderfully. I have a couple of extra views on that, but that's more around, again, with EdTech and not necessarily, let me call it traditional universities, but I believe that there's still scope for a lot more partnerships and collaboration. Where, let me give you an example. If if your training programs that you're delivering happen to be, to school leavers. Sometimes we take it for granted that, somebody coming out of school has got the computer literacy skills they need to just jump into learning immediately. And in a lot of instances, a school leaver maybe doesn't even know how to send out a meeting invite. So from an EdTech perspective, you could almost have, I see that getting them ready, setting that foundation to kind of bridge that gap so they actually absorb and get the best out of the university and the EdTech, so the blended learning environment. So I still see there's lots of partnership and cross collaboration opportunities in that space.
I think that would be wonderful if something like that is introduced. I hope that answers your question, Teja. So we actually had sent out a couple of emails to our registrants, and then we got a question from them. Let me just quickly get that up. Yes. So when it comes to alternate education, like online courses or distance learning programs, how do we maintain the balance between quality of education and the quality of the student undertaken?
Yeah, I think that's super important. That's when the EdTech platform comes into play. Is ultimately enabling you to give almost a real life experience. And I think what we've done as an institution to combat that is to remove as many barriers as possible to kind of living that student experience. And what I mean by that is, what we've done is partnered with local mobile networks to provide zero rated access to the online learning platform, so that one is not being penalized for the more videos they watched from a data usage perspective, and ultimately the cost that comes with that. But what we've also done is put as much content onto the EdTech platform, and Moodle is ours, that enables them not to have to go to other to other sources of information to get information. So we provide them with free access to many press reader and many other public information subscriptions. So it's ultimately just removing those barriers for a student that would ultimately enhance that experience. Because ultimately, if you're just giving them a PDF document for them to read in their own time, that's not engaging, that is often seen as time consuming, and not really being shown or navigated through that content, it's largely going to disengage them, and they'll probably look to study something else, potentially somewhere else.
I agree. Chantel, do you have something to add?
No, I absolutely agree. Yeah.
All right, great. So I don't see any more questions to the audience. We can maybe have 2 more minutes for question answer session. So if you have any more questions, please do put them up. Like I said at the beginning of the session, we had put up a couple of polls. If you have not responded to them, please do it right now, because, like I said, we'd love to hear from you, learn more about you. And yes, if you have any more questions after this session, also you can definitely reach out to us. Our team is ready to help you with any questions that you have. And one more thing is about this webinar. You will get the recording after the session. Hopefully, tomorrow we will send the recording to you through an email. And of course, you can always reach out to us if you have more doubts or any questions. Yes. I don't see any more questions coming in, so I guess that is about it. Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you so much, Chantel, for taking the time out and actually coming and taking this beautiful session. It was really lovely and very insightful. I'm sure the audience also enjoyed. And thank you so much to the audience as well for being wonderful. I saw that there were a lot of emojis coming in, and thank you for all the questions. And yes, thank you to the backend team for hosting this in such a beautiful way and also for setting this up. So, with that, that's about it from my side. To the speakers, if you have any closing notes, please.
I think just from my side, thoroughly enjoyable. Thank you, Kartika, for facilitating this session, and thank you, Chantal, for a wonderful chat, discussion, and engagement. Always nice to catch up with you, and I'm sure we'll be chatting very soon.
Yeah, likewise, Kartika, thank you. It's always great working with you. Adam, always great chatting to you, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks to the audience for taking the time out to join us today.
Yes, definitely. So, yes, that's about it. Thanks again to our speakers for taking the time out and speaking to us and educating us. All right, so that's it, everyone. Have a nice day. We'll meet you in the next session.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.